Hi, welcome to my channel. My name's Christina Kent and I'm an oil painter based out of San Francisco. As an artist, I've dealt with a lot of really bad habits, practices, and ways of thinking that held back my art practice for a really long time. So I'm hoping that I can share them with you, and by sharing them with you, I can both reduce them in my own life, but also help you notice them if you're experiencing them as well, and help kind of all of us overcome them. Because I think a lot of times we really want to create, we really feel like we have our best work inside of us, and it's just there are these obstacles in our way, these mental blocks, this resistance that keeps it from coming out. But we really feel much better when we make the work, even if it's hard. So I think it's really worth doing the effort to overcome these art blocks so that we can make our best work. So today I'm going to talk about a big art block for me, which is the statement, I'll make art when. And you can finish this sentence in many ways. I'll make art when I get a residency. I'll make art when I have a full weekend to myself. I'll make art when I have a real art studio. I'll make art when I don't have a full-time job. I'll make art when I have more energy. I'll make art when I have more time. I've said this to myself many, many times over the years, and every time it's resulted in me just delaying and delaying my work. And oftentimes the when that I was waiting for never happened. Or by the time it did happen, I had come up with another I'll make art when that was preventing me from making my work. No matter what, it always seemed like there was an excuse, some other force that was preventing me from making art. And it's not to say that that you should make art all the time. You know, there are definitely times in your life when you just can't make art, when maybe you're going through a big life transition, or you're dealing with a really serious illness or some other really important thing that deserves all of your time and attention and energy. And I think when we're in those moments, it's really important to put all of our energy into what we really need to focus on. But what I noticed for me is that when I was making these I'll make art when statements, it often wasn't the case that the barrier that I was facing was really a significant thing. Usually, when I really got down to it, what was blocking my art was fear. And I was just using the circumstances of my life as a way to justify not creating, because I was afraid that I wasn't good enough. I was afraid that it would be too hard. I was afraid that people wouldn't like it. All of those fears are what was driving me to come up with these excuses and say these I'll make art when statements. And I think this habit can be really tricky because it's true, sometimes there are things in your life that you really need to focus on. And also a lot of times the reasons they do have some merit to them. Sure, it would be a lot easier to make art if I had a huge art studio with all the supplies I needed. It would be a lot easier to make art if I didn't have a full-time job. It would be a lot easier to make art if I had all of the free time and energy at my disposal. But that's just not the way life is. I think the danger if you keep thinking this way, and if we keep saying, okay, I'm going to push my art making off into a later date, the danger is that you might never make art, that later date might never come. And when I think about it that way, then I really feel motivated to overcome this resistance, because I'm not willing to spend my whole life waiting to make art. I want to make it now. And if I waited for the perfect circumstances in my life to make art, I would never make art. And I think one of the really pernicious things about this habit also is that it takes away our agency and our power as creators. We are kind of ignoring the fact, like we're saying, oh, I need the circumstances to be this way so that I can make my art. And we're ignoring what's in our own power to do, that we can do right now, even in the circumstances that we're in, to create what we want to create. So now when I notice myself fall into this habit of thinking, I've developed a few strategies that really help me, that help me engage with it more productively and move forward so that I can create my art. The first thing I do is introspection. So if I'm coming up upon this I'll make art when thought, the first thing I want to do is think, is this actually a circumstance that I really want to pause my art making for? Do I really want to wait until later to make my art until some of these circumstances change? Or is this just fear talking? Because sometimes it's true. Like last year I moved to a new apartment, And I decided I wasn't going to focus on making art until after I'd completed the move and after I got settled into my new house. And I think that was a really good and reasonable decision for me. But other times I think about, oh, I'm gonna wait until I have a bigger studio to start making large scale work. And really, it's not, I can make large scale work in the studio that I'm in now. When I sit down with myself and I really think about it, it's just the fear that's driving that statement, that is bringing up that resistance. So the first thing that I do, I sit down and I try to think, is this really a circumstance that I'm willing to pause my art for? Or is this just fear talking, and is this something that I can move through? The second thing I do is I look for counterexamples to prove me wrong. So I think, okay, if I'm telling myself I'll make art once I switch to a part-time job rather than a full-time job, I'll look for examples of people who have full-time jobs and still manage to make the time to make art. Or if I'm thinking, oh, I'll make art once I have like a real fancy art studio, I'll look for examples of people who are making art in on their kitchen table, or who work in a sketchbook or things like that. But I'll look for these examples of people who are proving me wrong and showing me that these barriers that I think are really real are actually not so real after all. And then the third thing I like to do is take a small step to overcome that resistance. So if I think that I can't make art because I have a full-time job, then I will find 5 minutes of my day where I can do a little sketch in my sketchbook to prove that thinking wrong. Or if I'm thinking I can't make large-scale work in a small home studio, then I'll reorganize my home studio, which I did just recently, so that I can make more large-scale pieces, so that I can show myself that it's actually possible. Or if I'm telling myself I'll make art when I have a whole weekend because I want to work on a big project that's going to take a lot of time, I'll instead start working on the project today and break it up into small chunks that I can fit into my regular schedule, so I don't have to wait until a magical whole weekend arrives. For example, what I can do, and what I often do, is I'll do the underpainting one day, and then I'll do the block-in the next day, and then I'll refine details the next day. And that's a lot more manageable for me than waiting for a full weekend to work on an art piece. The important thing is that you find a small, manageable step that you can do right now to prove that you can do it. Don't save your art making just for an ideal future. Work with what you have right now. It's not as hard as you think it's gonna be. And yeah, like I said, this is something that I still struggle a lot with myself, even after recognizing this pattern multiple times. It's something that still comes up for me, and every time I have to go through these steps and work myself through it. But it gets easier and easier each time around. What about you? Do you ever find yourself falling into the I'll make art when trap? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, that's all for today. I hope you found it helpful. And a huge shout out to my supporters on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. If you like my art, if you like my videos, and you want to help me make more, consider supporting my Patreon at the link below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.